Well, it's day 13 of the challenge and it's time to wrap our heads around HTTP and asynchronous programming with observables. It's going to be great.
All right, it's time to dig deep into HTTP, and we are going to pick up where we left off last time with our friends component and had a detailed friend view here. We're going to actually change this friends component now to, rather than returning static data, we're going to fetch some JSON data to display and learn a bit about the joys of async work with observables. Now, as I bootstrap this app, I notice on the right-hand side, I'm getting a deprecation warning about our new friend component saying that it hasn't been declared in the module. So why don't we just fix that up first? So let's grab our source here and we will import we've got our friend component there. I'm just going to import a friend component there, and we've noticed we've missed it from this declarations. Now the backward compatibility mode has picked that up, but that's not going to live on in future versions. So let's just fix that up straight away. We will declare our friend component and import it there, and then we have managed to bust something here. Okay, great. And so now we are ready to go. We have our deprecations all fixed up, and now we're ready to charge into HTTP. Now we've got the module file open, so let's just start there. We're going to have to import some Angular HTTP support straight into our module so we can then inject the services later on. So let me just do that right now. I'm going to import the HTTP module, and then I'm going to import that, add that to our imports list here. So we'll be able to import and use those services throughout our application. So we have things imported to use HTTP now, but we of course don't have any data to fetch, and rather than set up a whole bunch of remote services and stuff, why don't we just, for now, in our public folder, which we said is the place where we can put static assets, we're just going to simulate that, and we're going to add a friends.json file, which is going to be the equivalent of what a remote server would return to us. And if we're going to just pick something simple to learn this stuff, I thought we'd go into our feed service and find our list of friends here, which is presently this kind of array, and we're just going to grab that guy and put it in our friends JSON. Now it's complaining here because it doesn't like this quote character, so I'm just going to Control D to select all those and change them over. And we're good. I don't need that. And we're set to go. So now we have our little array. Perhaps we should change some of these because we want to make sure that we are returning the right one. So I'm going to call Tony test no avatar. Great. So now I have a list of some sample data, and it's time to work out how we're going to call this. So we're going to first of all change our feed service. We have a feed service here that returns our array. We're going to just comment you out for now, because this is the method we're going to attack, but we'll need some imports before we get underway. So we're going to have to need, and I'll talk you through these as we paste them in, we're going to have to import our HTTP service, which is what we can do our gets and posts on, our response object, which is the thing that HTTP GET returns, and an observable, which we'll talk about in a sec, which is how this system allows clients to subscribe to those responses asynchronously. Okay, so let's maybe just hack some code in here so you can see how this works. First change that you're going to notice is we're not going to return an array of string anymore. In fact, we're going to return an observable, which is itself typed. So this is going to be a string array. What this means is that clients will subscribe to this observable, and when the data arrives, they'll be handed a string array. So the next step is to actually call our HTTP friend, this.http.get. Now hang on, we don't have a HTTP friend yet. Where is this going to come from? Okay, well, we'll have to inject that. So let's go back to our constructor, and we are going to inject a private HTTP, which is of type HTTP. Okay, so now we have HTTP service injected, and now we can do some calls on it. So let's go back to where we were. We can do get, and then we need to pass it the URL that we're going to actually get. In our case, we said it's going to be friends.json, which is just a static file that we're serving up. Then we need to do something on the what gets back. So what we get back is an observable response object. Now we want to marshal that thing to JSON and be ready to rock when we return it to clients. So we can use a map method, and map is just saying some transformer that you can apply to this observable once things arrive. So it's going to give us back a response object, which I'll just call response. And we're going to want to do something with that. So we're going to just say, we're going to call JSON on it, the method on it, which just returns a JSON object. And we're going to return that JSON we know is a string array. So we'll just type that, which lets us have our strongly typed return value. So we haven't yet returned this though, right? Okay, so we've done a get. We've then done on that observable stream, we're going to map the response that comes in on it and grab some JSON off it and marshal that to a string array. So what we'll end up with is an observable of string array. So this takes a while for your head to kind of wrap around. So just follow along for now and implement the stuff, and then we'll have a chance to play with it and get a bit of a vibe for it. So we've got this end done in our service, which is now return to observable. It's time to hack our actual friends component. Now what we did before was we could call get friends because it was a synchronous call and we were set to go. Well, we can't do that anymore. So what we're going to have to change this to is this.feedService.getFriends, which we said is going to return an observable of string array. And what you can do with observables is you can subscribe to them, which says when this data comes in, let me know about it. And our new friends will come in. And it's in our completion here, it's saying that this is actually going to pass in a string array when it's good to go. So a string array is something we're super familiar with. So we can do all sorts of goodness with that. First thing we might do is we might log it out, since it just gives us some visual feedback that things are happening. This is new friends, it's not a this. Once we've got that, new friends we should call that. And once we've got that, we can of course assign it to this.friends. New friends, and then we're good to go. The actual Angular views can handle these observables themselves if we pipe them through what's called an async pipe, and we'll have a look at that further down the track. But for now, let's assume we want to keep this guy as a string array and keep our view untouched. So let's just save that. I'm just going to make sure everything's compiling happily here. Yes, and it is super good. And in fact, now we see this fetch has fired. We've got Tony test no avatar. She doesn't in fact have an avatar because this is now fetched from JSON. In fact, it's gone to try and find it and hasn't found it. So just to prove to ourselves that this is all happily working, let's go into friends.json and just change Tony back to be the one that will resolve to an avatar. And our app relaunches, and we find that Tony now renders with the correct icon and is returned here. So that is the process of moving from what was a static setup to an asynchronous setup using real HTTP. Tomorrow on the show, we'll start to flesh this out with some real CRUD operations and get away from our static file and move to a more server-oriented database setup that you'd use in a real app. But for today, that was enough to learn about async and HTTP. Hope you had a great time. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow.